Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Rocio Ruiz, your host and producer for Out in the Real World podcast. My hope is that when you listen to this podcast, you find comfort and support if you are experiencing a major change in your life and are going through emotions of uncertainty.
Out in the real world. Out in the real world.
I'm very excited today because we have our lovely guest, Ashley Contreras, and I'm just so glad that you're here. So thank you, Ashley, for being here. First of all, did I even say your last name correctly? Okay. That was nerve-wracking. Okay, I'm glad I did. But just to give you guys a background of how I met Ashley. So Ashley and I both went to SUNY Geneseo, which is a public university upstate in New York. And basically for state schools, there's a program called EOP, Educational Opportunity Program, and so it helps students who come from lower income households receive academics and financial support and also social support. I feel like it just gives you a lot of resources. So before actually starting your freshman year of college, you have to go through a summer program, like I think the month prior to moving into college. So we stay there for a month and you take college courses, and it basically feels like camp. And you have certain events, you're living there for a whole month. And the program is ran by mentors. So it's upper class students that are mentoring you, tutoring you, and supporting you as you're transitioning from high school and trying to learn what it's like to be a college student. So before I actually was a freshman in college, Ashley was my mentor. And I was experiencing a change in my life at that point as well because I moved basically 7 hours away from home. That was the first time that I've ever been away from home. And it was a hard transition. And I think what helped me was Ashley was very vulnerable with us from the beginning and was open about her own experience with homesickness and what that was like for her. So I remember just feeling comforted and knowing like, okay, like at least I have someone that I can share if I am struggling through the summer program. And I definitely did rely on Ashley as a mentor. So it is very bittersweet to be at this point where I graduated college and you also graduated college, and to be able to talk about a new change in our lives that we'll get into. But that's post grad life and what that entails. So that's a little bit of a background between my interactions with Ashley. But Ashley, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
To work with a younger age group, but I didn't start out that way. I actually started out as a sixth grade teacher, um, and I soon realized that um, my calling was an early age group, and that's how I became a preschool teacher.
Thank you, Ashley, for giving us some insight into what you will be discussing as well in this podcast. Just to kind of give everyone a background of Ashley's transition and kind of what led her to be in the current path that she's in. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Um, my childhood, I pretty much was kind of sheltered in. Just um, I I would say I wasn't really someone who was social with peers my age. I feel like at different points in my life, I kind of struggled with that. With when it came to like first off my language barrier, trying to distinguish between English and Spanish at first. And then also like, I had experiences where I was bullied, and that caused me to kind of just become shy, shut down, and just keep to myself. I built up a wall so that um I wouldn't really get hurt as much, even though I'm sensitive. um, so yeah, I feel like pretty much my entire childhood has been, me to myself or like a very small, close group of friends. Um, I just remember like being attached to a book each time. Really, it was like my little escape from life.
I love that. And I relate. I'm sensitive as well, which is good and bad at times. But yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit about your childhood. And did your parents go to college?
My mom actually had me at a pretty young age. She had me at 16, and she was in her last school year when she had to drop out for a bit. Um but then she actually like she has like this incredible success story. Her I rem- from stories that she's told me, she ended up trying to go back to finish up her degree, her high school career. And her guidance counselor said that she couldn't, that she wouldn't be able to make it. Um, and she ended up proving her wrong. She graduated high school and she ended up getting her bachelor's right after. And she worked alongside me, like sometimes she would take me with her to college. Whereas my father, I don't believe he finished high school.
That's awesome that your mom proved that person wrong and that she ended up pursuing her bachelor's. Do you feel as though seeing what your mom experienced that motivated you to want to go to college? Or what do you think made you be like, you know what, I think college is something that I want to try to pursue?
So actually, um, because of that story, just like my mom going through that at such a young age, she believed education was like very, very important. So it was kind of just like in the back brain for all of us kids. Like it wasn't any question. Like you had to go and get your degree. Um, and I actually like struggled. I'm not gonna lie, I did struggle. There were points, especially my freshman year of college, where I was like, this isn't for me. Like I can't do it. And it's because of that hard transition from high school to college that, people warn you about. However, it's either you don't take it too seriously or you don't know until you experience it itself.
What do you think about that transition was difficult for you?
I think it's because I typically was a straight A slash B student, so I was constantly on honor roll. And like to be frank and transparent, like my freshman year, I ended up not getting A's or B's. In fact, I was getting C's and D's, and that wasn't quite what I was expecting or hoping for.
I totally understand. I think for me, especially when you're transitioning into like high school to college, and like for us, we had to move upstate away from what we've grown up. It's just hard figuring out that balance and doing your best and not comparing yourself to other students. And not everyone transitions to college the same. And I found myself as well always comparing myself to other people, especially in classes that had to deal with science or math, because that's part of the requirement. You have to take some science courses, but those are the areas that I struggled the most with. And so to be in a lab and have to answer certain questions and just feel like I have no idea what's happening and everybody else seems to understand it. That was really hard for me because for some reason I wanted to take that moment as like, oh my gosh, this already defines my entire college experience. So I relate how academics can be a challenge, especially when you're just transitioning into it. Before going into college, did you know what you wanted to study?
Yes and no. um, I think it was my senior year of high school. My high school had allowed us to have an option of either taking an elective or doing an internship at a school. And you can actually pick the age group depending on what was available. It was first come, first serve. Um, and I ended up interning in a second grade classroom. Um, and that was basically like my Friday. Like every Friday, I would just spend my time with second graders. And I always knew that, like I wanted to work somehow with children. I just didn't like quite know yet. And my senior year, when everyone was filling out their applications for college, sending it out, getting acceptance letters back, I still was quite unsure as to what exactly I wanted to do. I had a friend who knew that she wanted to be a police officer, so she got it, and she got into John Jay. I had a friend that wanted to be a journalist, and she went for that. And here I am, just stuck. And I felt like I had some pressure through my family as well to figure it out, because here I am, I'm getting ready to start my life, and I was kind of anxious and scared. I felt so much pressure. But one day I decided, hey, why not try teaching? I mean, I like working with kids, and like thinking back to my experiences, I hadn't had that many great role models as teachers. So it was less of, oh, this is something I want to take with me into my classroom. It was more of, I definitely don't want a child to feel that way, or I don't want to bring this into my classroom. Like, that's not the role model I'm trying to be for someone who is going to be very important in life. So that was another reason as to why I went ahead and just made that decision, to major in teaching.
I love that so much, how you were very observant of the role models or the teachers that you had growing up and how there were things that you didn't necessarily value that they did and certain things that you could have taken from those experiences and kind of incorporate that into your teaching life. Overall, how would you say was your college experience and kind of you figuring yourself out during those 4 years of being in Geneseo?
My 4 year experience, I would say it was a roller coaster. I had my ups, I had my downs. I definitely feel like after I pushed through that first year, I had more groundedness. Like, I'm able to go ahead and like start to explore who I am and what I like. Um, I became like much more confident in my academics. I and that's like and that's the best part, because after the first year you don't have um at least not as many like requirements. Then you can just get into like the nitty gritty, the parts that you actually came here for, your interest. And that's how I started becoming more confident in my academics, because I'm interested in it. I'm understanding what I need to understand, and I'm able to apply that into the real world. Um I definitely feel like by my senior year, it just felt so nostalgic, because time flies by really fast. you don't even notice.
I couldn't agree more. And even just like you sharing that your struggles in the beginning, whether that's with confidence or just in general study habits, like to be able to make it through, you're like, whoa, like I was able to overcome this obstacle. And I mean, that's how life is, right? The seasons, any change is hard. And that's why with this podcast, a lot of it is about post grad and what that is like because it's a huge change in our lives. And I'm currently experiencing it, which is why I wanted to do a podcast like this, because it can be difficult to navigate it. It can feel very lonely, but um, I mean, it happens in our past, and we overcome it. And we just have to focus on that pattern. Um, so with you, when you ended up being a senior at SUNY Geneseo, did you have a plan as to what you wanted to do next, or what school you wanted to go to get your master's for teaching?
So I had so many different plans. Um, at first, I wanted to stay in Geneseo and continue my master's program there. Um, but then I decided to go back home to New York City, start teaching and really figure out what exactly do I want to major in for my master's. Because although I love teaching and I love kids, maybe I might want something different in the future. Maybe something else, maybe like counseling or something along those lines, you know. But I really wanted to just take my time to make that decision. Um, so I did end up moving back to New York City. And I currently am still deciding, you know, like I'm taking my time with it. Um, I feel like within the next year, I'll probably start my graduate program, but I'm not going to, you know, pressure myself into something that I don't feel confident in just yet. Because at the end of the day, who is the degree for? You know?
That is such an important thing to know. And again, something that I feel like I have been trying to understand is I think in my head, I've just been so. I mean, obviously, most of our lives it's school. So when we don't have something that we're comfortable and used to, it was a big shock for me to adjust into life out in the real world. And what does it mean to be myself, to not be a student and not have that label? And I find myself wanting to put myself a deadline and, oh my God, I gotta get this done before I turn this age. And it's so weird because if you really think about it, there is no timeline anymore in life. At this point, it's all about you figuring things out and what works best. There is no right or wrong decision to make. And that's just so weird because I'm not used to that. Um, so can you share with us how was that transition for you mental health wise or just in general, like going from living on your own and being independent in college to transitioning back into your household and having to go back to where you started, I guess you could say?
So for me, I would say I didn't know it then, but I definitely had it easy. You know, you're just starting your independence, learning um how, well, at least for me, like I started learning how to cook by myself, how to properly clean, do the laundry, having to go grocery shopping for myself, um all these necessities that are basic skills that anyone needs to survive in life. um I feel like now the the mental the toll that it has on my mental health has definitely changed in, to be honest, like negatively at times, because I moved back to my family, right? But then things changed where they ended up having to move um elsewhere. So then I ended up having to get my own apartment very last minute. And although I am happy and proud that I have my apartment and I'm living on my own, it doesn't take away from the fact that I'm really doing it on my own. I have to, like, like I go to work every day. I take care of my dog. I have to take care of my home and myself, you know? And just trying to find time in the day to do all these things. It's
Did you find yourself kind of having an identity crisis? Like I mentioned before, like for me, I felt like so much of my life was being a student and having that label and accomplishing things within that title or label. So now that there's really, there's no structure that I'm in other than the fact that like now there's this uncertainty. I'm like, who am I in my free time? Like, what do I like to do? Like, what are my passions? I'm more than just a title or a career or a job. So I'm trying to figure that out. Like, who am I? Did you find yourself going through that as well?
I'm still going through it, you know? I don't like I said earlier, like I'm a baby adult. I am a 3-year-old adult, if you really think about it, right? So I'm just going about life trying to figure out what is life. Like, what is it that I have to do in order to make myself like healthy and happy? Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing in this world. Like making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your own mental health and you're happy.
When you were applying to jobs, how was the job application process like for you?
Um, Extensive. I think I started looking my during my senior year of college just so that I can have my foot in once I get out. So I think because there is a need for teachers, it wasn't as hard to find a position. It was more so how the system takes care of their teachers. That's the thing.
When you had that first job as a teacher, what was that like for you? And how was that transition into now being an adult in a job position and being responsible for a group of students?
I feel like at first I was more reserved than I am now. Um, in that first teaching position, it was my first real teaching job. Like I was trying to figure out what being a teacher was like. Like in college, they don't really like you'll have your field visits, you'll create a lesson and you'll demonstrate it to the children, but it's not like I had a full day full of just going ahead and teaching the kids or like having my own classroom, my own atmosphere. What I was interested in, bringing my creativity into it. Um, I feel like in my first position, I also was kind of just like pushed into it. Um, Not to say like I did get trainings, but I feel like for certain things they didn't properly equipped um what I had needed to do. Like what was my role? How can I help these children succeed? I feel like I was set up to fail in a way.
So, when you were put in that setting where you didn't feel as prepared to have that role, what helped you kind of get out of that or push through this position as you were trying to figure out what were your next steps?
I think the support of my best friend, having someone there that kind of understands what you're going through and um just being able to be open and vulnerable with them really helped me. Um, Also, just thinking about myself. Like sometimes there are cases in which you do need to be selfish, for your own sake.
That's so true. So, what are some of the things that you have learned during these years after graduating college about yourself?
I think I learned that I just need to be kinder to myself, um, more patient, take my time to do things because life is messy, life is unfair, and that's what's expected. And you just have to make the best out of it.
I couldn't agree more. I think so during this time period, right? Like I have been applying to jobs and I haven't really heard many responses from a lot of the jobs, and if I have, there have been rejections. And I saw this thing on TikTok where this girl was talking about, are you ready to be next? In terms of like, if, God or the universe gave you an opportunity right now, like, would you be ready for it? And I was reflecting on a lot of my self talk during this time period, right? Where, I'm haven't had an opportunity or anything like that. And I don't really know what I'm doing. My self talk isn't positive, and I'm like, I don't think I really would be ready for an opportunity yet. So it kind of made more sense to me as to why things have gone the way that they have, because a lot of my fundamental like values or like um thought process, or just in general like things that I say to myself, like the foundations of that, like it's not stable. So how could I expect, an opportunity to come, because I'm like, if I'm not even grateful for the things that I have now, there is no way I would be able to make it in a big job where I'm probably going to be continuing to compare myself to other people in that field. And then it's going to be even more hard because I'm going to really doubt the process of being a journalist. So, yeah, that's kind of where I've been in my life as well, is just that self compassion. It's easy for me to give it to other people, but when it comes to myself, I think I'm just my biggest critic. So, that's been hard to adjust to as well.
Yeah, and like just going off of that, like I feel like it's very easy for a lot of people to go ahead and compare themselves to other people, like how they are in different aspects of their life. And the thing is, we all start the same way, you know? We start with nothing. Like literally, like you have maybe some prior knowledge, but you don't know until you have that experience. And you as you go, and it doesn't matter how long you go, like no two people are the same, nor is their experience. You can learn about a certain aspect or component to life maybe in a year, whereas someone else, it might take them 30 years. And that's something to just really think about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think um even like with social media like LinkedIn, again, it's easier to, I feel like, compare yourself, but that's people are only posting the highlights obviously of their lives. So what do you think was helpful for you to focus on yourself and not compare yourself as much? I know you're still working on that self-compassion, but you did mention speaking to your friend was helpful. Like, what were some things that you did on your own time? I know that you also created this like writing page on Instagram, right?
Yeah,
It was kind of
I
like an outlet.
yeah, like I kind of at some point I started like a healing process where I would write how I was feeling through poetry. And so I created a page where I literally dedicated every day to just, like write something that had meaning towards it. And like not just for myself, but for other people who might feel that the similar way. Um, and to be honest, I had stopped, but I feel like it is something that I need to pick up on again. I feel like a lot of things that I have learned throughout these couple years, is that I like to take on new things, new hobbies, and then I'll end up just stopping it. Not because necessarily I'm good at it and like I already know the skill, but I feel like I'm someone who likes to do a lot of things at the same time. Just trying to figure it out. What are some things I do like and just continue so that I'm kind of like, I don't know, I guess I don't really want to stop where I'm at. In my tracks. Like I want to continue. I feel like that's a way where I can grow because I'm just learning different ways to like self-soothe, you know?
And I do think it is important to just have your own outlet, especially like your own creative outlet to express whatever it is that you want to express, whether that's your creativity, your own thoughts, because, obviously you wanted to teach in the English area, right? Like you
Yes.
wanted to be a teacher for English. And for me, like I wanted to do journalism. And so right now in the time period where I'm doing the steps that I need to do to apply to jobs and wait and all of that, like I don't want to stop what fulfills me, which is just having conversations with people because I always find myself learning a lot from conversations. Even in our last conversation that we had, Ashley, like where it was like the pre-interview just to get to uh know a little bit about your background. It was helpful for me to feel like, oh my gosh, like what I'm experiencing, somebody else is experiencing as well, or just learning something new. I believe you or your friend Yadeline mentioned like everything matters and nothing matters. So just things that like quotes that people go by, all of that, like I love just learning things from people. And I didn't want to stop that, which is why I'm doing this podcast. Similar to you, I feel like when I try something, I sometimes panic and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel the same and I kind of give up on it. Um, but I don't want to do that because I think I also want to do something because I enjoy it and not necessarily what kind of interaction it's having. And with this podcast, I think it's also a challenge for me to do it because I'm enjoying the conversations and not so much of whether or not people are listening because I just want to keep on practicing the skills that I've learned in college and not lose that momentum meanwhile I wait. So, hopefully this encourages you to continue your writing pieces as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to get back on that. I definitely resonate with you though. I feel like typically I'll find something and like it's the self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to reteach myself, you know. Um, you know, it's so easy to be hard on yourself, but it's like again, you're you're just learning. You know, you're doing this on your own.
I
You
love how
may
you have that like
yeah.
you have that little like saying where you're like you're a baby and stuff like that. And you really are. You're just figuring things out. Um and that's the beauty of this time in our lives is like this is literally the 20s. That's why people say it's so hard because a lot of it is just you discovering yourself all over again. No one is there to guide you and be like, this is the next step that you need to take because at this point, it's what you want to do and fulfill whatever it is that you want to fulfill in your life. Um, and it's nerve wracking. It's scary for sure, but I think having vulnerable conversations is really important. And I thank you for being vulnerable as well and sharing your story because honestly, this podcast would not be what it is if I didn't have people who were interested in sharing their stories. Why do you think it was important for you to talk about your experience, and why did you decide to actually participate in something like this?
Yeah, I think because like how we've been talking, a lot of people have like this false image of what life is should be like or what it is like. And the reality is it's what you make of it. Like no like again, no two experiences are the same. You just have to do what it is that you feel it like you're comfortable in and is going to bring you joy. Because at the end of the day, like you had mentioned, everything matters and nothing matters.
That is so true. And it's been helpful for me to talk with you. Um, Lastly, what is something that you would say to someone who is feeling lost in their 20s or just in general, is dealing with some uncertainty in their life right now?
I probably would say take it easy on yourself. Like, you're not going anywhere. Like, not everything is needed to be done right away. There is no right or wrong way. There is no um you can't plan. Like, I feel like it's very easy for us to just set things out for the future, like, like how everyone might have like a short term, long term goal, but there's no right or wrong as to when those goals are done. They are done when they are done, and then create new ones.
I love that. Thank you so much. Lastly, is there anything else that you would like to add that maybe we didn't discuss?
Not that I can think of, no.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for being a part of this. And thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. So I'll talk to you all in the next episode. Okay, so